So the next section we're going to work on is memory. So how many of you have sat through the lecture or a math class or a history class and you understand everything that's going on in class, and then when you step out of class and you go to do the problems for the math class, or you go to study your history notes or whatever, you draw a complete blank? Lots of us have it, and you say to yourself, oh my goodness, I have a terrible memory. Well, that's not necessarily true, and I'll show you why. So how does our memory work? We remember things by association. So every piece of information that we get in has to be associated with another piece of information to help us remember it. So, for example, if I gave you a word like apple, what do you think of? Do some free association. So, did you come up with maybe red or green or yellow? Did you come up with that it's round? Okay, I've never seen a triangular apple, have you? How about maybe that it's sweet? Or that you give it to teachers? That it comes from a tree? Or maybe that it's a fruit? And I'm sure a lot of you came up with Apple iPads or an iPhone or a Macintosh or something like that. Maybe even different types of apples like Golden Delicious or Fuji or whatever you want to call them. That's all great. But you wouldn't necessarily think of a dog reading a book. Basically because we don't associate apples and dogs, there's not going to be that connection unless you have some crazy silly story about an apple or a dog, or a dog eating an apple under a tree, or who knows. So here's another example. What is the 7th letter of the alphabet? The answer? The letter G. So did you count on your fingers from A to G knowing that A was number 1? I did. Why do so many of us have a bad memory? We don't. We just don't know how to practice using it efficiently and correctly. So unfortunately, because our minds work by association, it's hard for us to connect a lot of things together that we need for our memory. So how do you remember what time class is? Or if you have a class in an actual room, how do you remember where the room is? Some things are easier than others. But when there's no association between two pieces of information, that's where we got to do a little bit of outside of the box thinking. So we make rhymes and acronyms and all kinds of crazy stuff to help us remember how to do things, or how the process, or all of those kinds of things. Keep it in our memory by using crazy, wacky stuff. How about some of these things that we learned in school? Do you remember any of them? I before E except after C, or when sounded like A, as in neighbor or way. Roy G. Biv are the colors of the rainbow. Every good boy does fine are scales for music. Never eat sour watermelons is north, east, south, and west. Homes, those are the Great Lakes. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. Fanboys are coordinating conjunctions. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And please excuse my dear Aunt Sally is from algebra. That's order of operations. So why do they work? Well, they form an easy to remember and clever association between what it is and the information that you need to put together. Like, how on earth does Aunt Sally have anything to do with math? But that's the idea. It's a creative and clever way to remember. And sometimes the more ridiculous or the funnier, the better. So what I want you to do now is I want you to come up with association between the words on the left and the words on the right. So mouse and S, and fur and R, and so forth. So, can you remember? Mouse was S. Fur was R. Now, I don't know if the association you made was that the mouse's tail became an S, or S was in the word, or, fur, I don't know. I don't know how you made those associations, but good job if you could remember. Train and bridge. So trains go through bridges, or trains go over bridges. Moat and boat, because they rhyme. Popcorn and chair. I always think of a movie theater, but you may have your own association that you made between the two of them. Elephant and pancake, because if you get sat on by an elephant, you become flat as a pancake. Toothbrush and canal. Everyone thinks of those dreaded root canals. Umbrella and triangle, most likely because it is shaped like a triangle. So how'd you do? Well, here's some improvement tips for you. Take the time to etch important things into your memory, which means, yes, you may have to repeat it, you may have to do a lot of repetition for some things, because repetition is necessarily good, is very necessary for good memory. That's where a lot of things like flashcards come in handy. Make sure that your information is accurate, so make sure that you are getting very good notes. If you have any questions, ask the instructor or find a study buddy and compare notes. Make sure that your information is as accurate as you can get it. Visualize what was happening in class, or what was going on. How do I visualize during this portion of my notes what was happening? Make visual links. Maybe repeat everything aloud. And make a mental review. So from here, I want you to try and do some memory games that are found on Blackboard, as well as I need you to look at the note-taking skills workshop that is next.